Yeah.
Let's begin. Do you want to do the intro to the podcast? It does not have a name because last time I called it Pakodas with Popu and me.
F. Let's keep this as the intro, like what we are doing right now.
Okay.
Let's show them we
Wait,
are
no, I'm
deciding
not.
the intro.
Okay, wait. So I want to call this Chai with Chavla and me. It keeps the thing
Try
going.
with Chawla. F.
Chai with Chavla and me.
Yeah.
The chicken would be too. No, हमारे पर trademark लग जाएगा छोड़ो. Let's not get into that. Okay, so good morning everyone, or whatever time you're watching this. I usually listen to podcasts at night and stuff. But okay, so we're here today and we want to talk to you about recent changes, about developments in India's foreign policy, not so much as changes, and certain stuff that's been happening, how India has been trying to counter China's string of pearls, so to say, what they've built around India in the form of Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They're making inroads into Bangladesh. This whole, well, sort of string of pearls in the sense that they built a sort of. Well, Puranja, would you like to elaborate on this anyway?
Strategic alliance in the island nations, in a way, or trying to at least, some sort of a thing which I would actually like to compare this to the Imperial Japanese, what they did during World War II,
Right.
capturing Manchuria. All the difference is that China is trying to do it in an indirect manner, which doesn't look like it's trying to colonize the countries, but in a way it's trying to do it. So yeah, that's all.
It's basically gheraued India, to so to say, from a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
sides here. And so India is trying to counter that. I was listening to a foreign minister talk recently, and he said that out of the 54 odd nations in Africa, India is doing some sort of development project in 51 of them. So, I mean,
Lately, actually, if you are catching up with the news, um, the Indian Army, which
right.
actually deploys the largest amount of troops in the UN mission in Africa, or well, to the Security Council, they captured people in South Sudanese territory, which has been a very historical thing. It has been in the news lately. So yeah, India is a big player in Africa, but I
So
would
that's
still
that's the
say,
reason.
yeah, I would still say not as big as China. See, Africa
That's
is
obviously.
kind of trying to make, China is kind of trying to make Africa China's China.
Yeah, I've heard about that, but I think that's a topic we'll cover in a later video.
Yeah.
Let's move to talking about India's immediate neighbors at this point of time and talk about what's exactly happening in that case. So, if I can start talking about the story here, it's essentially in this time of crisis where Sri Lanka is actually, well, it's been doing better than us in a lot of human indices. But at this point of time, with the sort of depth that it's in China, it's not doing so well economically, right? And so what India has done, it's opened a credit line essentially with Sri Lanka, not a credit line, a currency swap, like the Federal Reserve did with the European nations to allow for liquidity of the dollar. And basically, this is allowing Sri Lanka, well, to establish a currency swap with India, which obviously helps provide some sort of liquidity support to their economy. And it may not be in the form of the huge investments that China is providing, but India has done this. It's offered to restructure the debt, around 840 million of debt that Sri Lanka actually owes India. So, what are your comments on this?
So in my opinion, I honestly do not think that India has done this because of their foreign policy interests or to counter China. Because in all honesty, if we see what the Sri Lankan government has been up to, I think they have realized very quick, maybe because of the experience or looking at other countries such as Pakistan, that you should not get involved in an investment sort of cycle, the death trap that China creates, which it has done with Pakistan. For example, with the One Belt One Road initiative, the OBOR, but the Sri Lankan government had realized that pretty quickly. So I Sri Lankan flag. So I think Yeah, so I think what India may have been trying to put forth a message here, but I think it's not very likely because see, if we want to really counter Sri Lanka, China and the Sri Lankan or the Indian Ocean region, it's all about the islands there. So as we know, China actually has a lease of 99 years on the Hambantunda port, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and India is trying to counter that, if I'm not wrong, by investing in a port alongside Japan, uh, which it did in 2019. So I think that is sort of this is maybe like sort of like a small thing in the puzzle which India is trying to counter, but it doesn't really send a huge message to China in a way because China really thinks in a different manner, especially under Jinping. But yeah,
We might be in too deep, right? Because India has been trying to invest in one of the ports in Sri Lanka as well. Like, I think you talked about that. It says here the East Container Terminal of the Colombo port,
yeah, Colombo
right?
is literally the capital city, so
The
it's a big
capital.
port. Yeah,
And but it's assumed that because of Chinese pressure in the region, the Sri Lankans have recently formed this committee to review the deal that they essentially set up with India. And that may just be because, well, of the Chinese pressure and because, well, Big Brother's there and they owe Big Brother a lot of debt in this case. So they might be into deep in this situation. In India, I don't think currently has the economic backing, though it may be so in the future, but currently it does not have the economic backing to deal with China in that case over there. But that brings us on to our second thing, I think, talking about another essential part of this string of pearls. When we're talking about, right, let's talk about when we're talking about Bangladesh. So, Bangladesh has not really been as well strictly part of the string of pearls as Pakistan or
well,
even
it's
Sri
not
Lanka
really a
has.
part of the string of the pearls. If you see, the string of the pearls really refers to the section of the islands in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. It's Bangladesh is more sort of a counterbalance because Bangladesh, well, it stands out in sort of the geographical string
Right.
as it is, starting from the South China Sea all the way to the Suez Canal. It really doesn't lie anywhere, so it's sort of in the corner. But thing is, it obviously shares a border with India. Uh,
And
Bangladesh
China.
owes its freedom, its existence to India. So in countering that, China has played a huge role because if you see the whole, well, half of the military of Bangladesh is all Chinese products. The
Exactly, funded by China.
yeah, the aircrafts that it operates, J7, which is a copy of the MiG-21, it's a Chinese aircraft. So I think Bangladesh fled a bit towards China, and I think it's not partly, it's completely India's mistake. Uh, because see, Bangladesh owes its existence to India. And well, the current Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, she has been more favorable to India, but it's still
But
half
she
and half
cannot
because
resist the economic power of China.
yeah, in a way. See, it's half and half because you can't suddenly end your relations with any country abruptly. So it has to be sort of a fade in, gradual process, which I think Sheikh Hasina has been inclined towards. And the diesel locomotives is definitely, step to counter China because China is big in the locomotives market. Even in Africa, it has been a huge
I mean,
presence
it
in
does
Africa.
not have, I think India does not come on with the big, broad brushstrokes in the form of foreign policy that China has. It has very high profile development projects in the form of the BRI, in the form of OPEC, in the form of, well, its development projects in China. If you're talking about the Wada port in Pakistan, it's very
Yeah.
high profile projects. However, when you talk about India, you don't really see such high profile projects. I would more liken it to like the foreign policies that Taiwan appropriates in the sense when it comes to the islands in the South China Sea, Taiwan often provides less when you're comparing it monetarily in terms of China, but they provide something that may be more needed. They might provide a trip to the national team, enough money for the trip, to provide a trip for the national team to attend a tournament, and so on. But they won't provide the big sort of the big brush strokes in the form of huge infrastructure that China does. But the thing is that a lot of that infrastructure hasn't exactly gone too well. We've seen a lot of these projects in Pakistan. Well, Pakistan is moving back towards China recently, but for a while the whole sort of infrastructure development in Pakistan started to come to a halt, and the Chinese projects were sort of failing there. And India's policy in that sense is sort of likened to Taiwan, I believe, because what they've done here, they provided 10 broad gauge diesel locomotives, right? But these are something that are going to be inherently very useful uh, to Bangladesh.
See,
And
according to me, actually discussing this point of how China gives sort of big brush strokes in terms of its foreign policy. See, the main point we are looking here is that the investments that China made in Pakistan were never meant to be successful. It's not that China genuinely wanted to develop something in Pakistan. See, how China operates is that it tells you that we are investing in your country at a very favorable sort of a deal. Uh, and later, when a country gets into it, they trap them into a series of debts. You end up having no money to pay them. Thus, you owe them something, and you then get into sort of it's a you then become sort of a puppet state of China. That's what China has been looking at. But again, going with the point of India not giving huge brushstrokes in terms of its foreign policy, I think India has been moving towards that because, uh, well, we would talk about Iran later, Iran and China. But if you see the
but
Chabahar
couldn't
port
one
project,
say that these detailed brushstrokes and these more focused brushstrokes, which
yeah,
are
see, the
often at
thing
a
is,
contrast from
India,
domestic policy, are actually quite more efficient in
yes,
terms of doing what they're meant to do.
I would agree with you. See, the thing is that India largely is focusing on small things to build up one major thing. But in some places, which I think is very correct, is that, for example, India hugely invested in the Chabahar port project, which is a direct competition to the Gwadar port
Absolutely.
China built. Then our foreign military bases in say Madagascar or the building of dams in Afghanistan, giving our retired after we got the Apaches, the old attack helicopters we had, giving them to the Afghan Air Force. I think that's sort of in line with how China is trying to give big brushstrokes. Well, the only difference here is China only gives big brushstrokes. It really doesn't
Mhm.
go towards giving small messages. That's a big difference.
So we'll come to Chabahar and the whole Iran situation, but let's cover one last country in this area. We're not necessarily going to talk about somebody in India's direct neighborhood, but we're going to talk about a state that often, well, for the mere matter of existence, it cooperates with China. It's a close friend of China, some might say, and of course, it's a friend. The leader is best buddies with the U.S. president, one could say. Right. So when it comes to this, I mean, the U.S. president is often more critical of his allies than his enemies. That we all know that. But yeah. So let's talk about North Korea. I mean, I I believe today, which is the
July.
27th of July, is the day that North Korea has admitted to having its first case of corona.
Yeah.
So today is the first day. But I mean, for a long time, they either it hasn't actually happened due to the very strict regimentation and due to the very strict measures that they take over there. What's recently happened is I hear today is that if if a person is caught not wearing a mask, 3 months of pay can be suspended in North Korea. But what's happening here? India is once again taking up this chance to get curry in some good favor with North Korea, because after all, what is diplomacy about? Then, well, storing up favor and then eventually using it when it comes to use. So, um, what India has done here, it's provided medical assistance worth about 1 million to North Korea in the form of, well, uh, in the form of tuberculosis medicines under the WHO's program to eradicate tuberculosis in North Korea. So well, it's not directly affecting the coronavirus and stuff, but it is dealing with one of the major diseases that North Korea faces, and we all know how dangerous tuberculosis actually is. What do you think about this?
Um, See, according to me, in my opinion, if you were to go back from say 2016 when Trump wasn't in power and the whole Korea situation with the US hadn't taken place, India would have never done something like that.
Okay.
Because if you go to history, India actually, if I'm not wrong, India actually did not support North Korea while when North Korea first got sanctions put against it by the United Nations. Uh,
So India did not support North Korea in
yeah,
that
I'm
case.
pretty sure India did not support because India was like it's a nuisance state. And also one big reason that India did not support North Korea is because if you were to go back to history, um, that there was this very big news that well, this is quite recent that India has an embassy in Pyongyang. Uh,
Right.
Wikipedia had updated this pretty early, but
Yeah, they've already got this 1 million medical assistance
yeah,
on
yeah.
there.
But I would tell you this very interesting give you this very interesting history lesson. So one of the top scientists of Pakistan when they were going through their nuclear development program. I was actually reading the UN 126 list. That is the no, he wasn't the father of the nuclear bomb in Pakistan or something.
I've read about this person, AQ
Yeah,
Khan,
yeah,
right?
but I'll tell
Abdul
you.
Qadir
So
Khan.
yeah, so technically speaking, according to the United Nations, he's a designated terrorist, but Pakistan considers him
Mhm.
as his one of his most greatest scientists, nuclear
And
physicist.
there was a lot of controversy in Pakistan itself. Like they
Yeah,
ushered
yeah,
him
yeah.
into
So
retirement.
yeah, exactly. So I'll basically tell you what happened. So illegally, there's this terror organization which operates in the Indo-Pacific region. It's sort of its abbreviation is JL. It's a terror outfit which operates in mainly in Indonesia, right? So they were actually involved in the transfer of this warhead. Not really warhead, but what actually happened is that see, Pakistan did not have the technology or the expertise to make an intercontinental ballistic missile, while North Korea
Right.
had that. And Pakistan had the expertise of how
Nuclear
to carry out nuclear
capabilities.
fission or nuclear fusion, any of those two. So what and plus North Korea was under heavy sanctions at that time. So what basically Pakistan did was they illegally through this masking through this terror organization, they gave enriched uranium, a lot of it, to North Korea, and North Korea in turn shared its technology on ICBMs with Pakistan, and thus you know this scientist, I'm forgetting his name, was declared as a terrorist by the United Nations. So
Abdul Qadir Khan. Right.
yeah, so basically the thing is India would have never supported North Korea because of various reasons. But now that India is starting to incline towards the United States, which in its own right is a good step. So I think it's in line with the US foreign policy that US might. And see, if you look at the detail here, it says that the United Nations had requested India, or the WHO had requested India to give medical assistance to
Absolutely.
to North Korea. And as we know, India has been very successful in its tuberculosis campaign. So I think it's sort of a mix of United States foreign policy and Indian foreign policy with the United States, and India being successful in dealing with tuberculosis.
Pakistan has been known to support terror outfits before. Like, I mean, sort of outfits on the fringe that you might say. Like, it's been known to provide weapons to Chechen terrorists as well.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of stuff that's happened with them. So
Funny
I mean,
thing, if you look at Bosnia, right? So
yeah,
Bosnia actually has three ethnicities. It has Serbians, it has the Czechs, and it has the Bosnians itself. The Bosnian community is predominantly Muslim. They follow Islam. So there's this terrorist with the name of Zaki ur Rahman Lakhvi. He was the mastermind behind 26/11 attacks. And the funny thing is that he has been involved in bombings in Chechnya and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is very far fetched. Us Indians would never think that Pakistani terrorists would go that far. But the fact of the matter is that Pakistan is very, very deeply involved in terrorism. The
I mean, it's financial institutions, especially. Like I've so for the case was when you had I don't remember where I read. This was in a book by Vikram Sood, the former Raw chief, and he
hmm,
was talking about how Pakistan is one of the most favored destinations where it comes to money laundering,
hmm,
especially because of the prevalence of the Hawala system with its connection in the Middle East and especially in Pakistan. And when it comes to a lot of especially banks that have been set up in Pakistan, there was a bank called the BCCI, which was a terror bank.
hmm.
It was the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. Right? So this was essentially a bank that was used to fund a lot of these terror activities, and it was based in Pakistan. So Pakistan
See,
has been a center
see, if
financially
you
for
if you
this
need
whole
to
situation
if
as
you
well.
need to look at how Pakistan has been sort of the center of producing or supporting terror activities, you don't even need to go that far. You don't even need to research about the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. The moment you search, for example, Hafiz Saeed, which is all of us Indians know the name of Hafiz Saeed, or well, not even think about Hafiz Saeed. Let's not even go that far. Let's only reach Bombay and talk about Dawood Ibrahim.
Right.
The funny thing is that that man has passports of several countries, but the
Mhm.
only country which hasn't banned his passport is Pakistan. And the UN has recognized Dawood as an international terrorist. We all know now he's arrested, but
Deceased.
yeah. But the thing is that if you see, it's very funny to me that even if you open the UN list about Dawood Ibrahim, it gives you the address of his house where he used to live, and it describes his house saying a White House in a crowded section of the city. So it's very funny how deeply Pakistan and how rather openly Pakistan is involved in this sort of an action.
So he's Okay, so I mean, we've covered a lot of this and it's very interesting stuff, but let's come back to the Chabahar port and the whole Iran situation, which we
Yeah.
discussed earlier, and how essentially it's turning out to be a changing point in the whole region. This New York Times report talked about essentially a deal that's supposed to be in the works between China and Iran, and it's reaching its final stages, and it would see the investment of around $400 billion by China into Iran over the next 25 years, which, if we much just take up in comparison, the size of Iran's GDP is okay. We've got it in crores here.
It's right here.
Yeah, right. So once again, sorry, my bad. Again, it's around between 400. It's around 470 500 billion crores, 500 billion, 470 $500 billion. And what's happening in that case is China is investing almost, well, you could say around 80% of the GDP's worth of Iran over the next 25 years. So it's really quite a lot of investment going on there, and it could offset a lot of the effects of the US sanctions. So,
Yes. See,
what do you want to say about that?
the main thing is that see, China is a very intelligent country. uh, the moment that US left I would
Power
not say
vacuum.
a power void, but the thing is that
Okay.
US has lost its power when Trump, came into power.
Due to its, well, isolationist policies that have
Yeah,
emerged in
yeah,
this era.
exactly. But so China has been trying to cover it. But I think, see, Iran is not really a nuisance state that you would, if they are trying to develop new nuclear technology, they would bomb a country randomly. Uh, and the main problem here is that if we look from the aspect of India, this is very problematic, and it's very huge, because the thing is that Iran has been such a big partner to India that when when Narasimha Rao was in power, and when the Babri Masjid incident happened, Narasimha Rao had contacted the Ayatollah. He had contacted the Ayatollah to send a message to Indian Muslims to tell them not to worry, and Ayatollah actually did that. It was
Right.
telecasted on Indian television. Him telling
So,
you know the Muslim
I
youth
mean,
of
a message
India.
from a religious leader like that obviously
Exactly,
carried a
exactly.
lot of importance.
Very
Even though
important.
like a lot of the population in India is Sunni, when it comes from a major leader like that.
Yes, yes. So see, the whole thing here is that the moment the Trump administration applied sanctions on Iran, and how if any country imports oil from Iran, they would also get
Mhm.
pressure from the US and potentially even sanctions. The whole problem was that India imported almost 90% of its oil from Iran, and it got it very cheap because, well, Iran and India were very good friends. But then India, because it wanted to it was either scared of the United States putting sanctions on it, or it just wanted to comply with the United States. It
I mean, the
ultimately,
United States is India's backer against China. So, I mean, one sort of
yeah,
manner. So, it had to maintain some sort of connection with them,
yeah,
especially with Russia's growing closeness to China.
yeah. See, the thing here is that Putin's Russia is not the USSR of how it was when India actually did a deal with the USSR. Uh,
Absolutely.
Putin's a big risk taker. Always in the newspapers, he would just jump into Ukraine and Georgia and do stuff like that. But the thing here is that India then had no option. It had to import oil from other countries. So India, being a huge player in Chabahar port, um, after this deal which is coming up with China, uh, a part of it is Chabahar, them building the railway project in Chabahar. But the major part of this deal is a military partnership, as it's highlighted in the heading. Is that see, once China says that they are entering a military partnership with a country, it means that China is looking forward to sort of align them in the Pakistan model, because if you see that over this
Right.
25 years, what China wants from Iran is cheap oil.
I mean, even the Gulf of Hormuz, if we're talking about here, the Strait of Hormuz, which a lot of the trade of the world passes through this strait,
Yes.
and this is going to be the first time where China has had control over such a major choke point when it comes to world trade, because like India had this control due to the strategic positioning of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but China had not exactly had this control over such a strategic choke point when it comes to trade. And due to this relation with China, they're going to, well, be very close, and they're going to be able to maybe possibly cut off that lifeline to world trade.
See, the thing which I think about is here now that the only country which
Right.
is well available to counter China, or the two countries, so to say, in the Strait of Hormuz or the Suez Canal region, left is Egypt and Israel, because both of them are US partners.
Hmm.
Uh, but US is not anywhere directly present there now. Neither is India, nor is any other powerful nation in the world. Well, India and US only being the only two powers capable of countering China in some sort of manner. But the
And
main
India already
problem,
has a lot on its plate when it comes to
yeah,
defense
yeah.
already. So
See, the
we would
whole
be
problem is
overextending
that the
ourselves.
reason the Chabahar port project the India went ahead with is was to counter the Gwadar port, right?
Hmm.
Because even if you see how Chabahar is placed, it gives one access to the inner mineral-rich region of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is very mineral-rich actually. So the main thing is that we have lost out on a huge chunk of land, not only in the state of Hormuz, so to say, but also in the inner region, at the actual territorial land of Iran and of Afghanistan.
Right?
So
We're
if you
looking
see
at.
Chabahar, it's right here. It actually the railway project is supposed to link it to inner Afghanistan.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that'll provide India with an alternate method of, well, easy access to Afghanistan recently, where it's been sort of shut out of the process when it comes to, well, the Taliban and the US finalizing on an agreement. And India, though it's had a major role to play in Afghanistan, it's sort of started being shut out of the process. But when we're coming to countering Chinese influence, there is something we have to talk about. Right? We've got to talk about the Quad. The rise of the Quad has been something that's been on mind of strategic analysts a lot in recent years when it comes to India. I mean, we all know it originally started as the result of, well, as the result of, well, a natural disaster. India was India's navy provided humanitarian support to some of its southern states, and the US was able to come in and support it as well. And then eventually we had military exercises. Um, if I remember correctly, Singapore, Australia, and one more nation were invited to join them as guests. And now what we're essentially having is that India, Japan, the USA, and Australia, out of which Japan, Australia, and India can prove to be, well, strong allies. These are middle powers essentially. Japan, when the US sort of pulling out, it gives an opportunity for middle powers like uh, Japan and Australia and France to play a most, even though France has been a very major power, it gives them an opportunity to play a more major and more autonomous role. And we're seeing that with India's with the Rafael deal, which we'll be talking about in a later episode. And we've seen that with, well, the emergence of Australia, really, it did not used to play. It did not used to be so so bold in its terms before. And we're seeing that with the alliance that has come up, with these four powers, with the exercises that are being carried out by the navies in these areas, especially in this, well, incredibly strategically important South China Sea, where we all know how China is laying claim to a lot of territory in the region. It's moving into the area of the Philippines. It's infringing on area that Indonesia claims. That there's a lot of issues in these regions. So, and what's your opinion about this?
See, I'll tell you something about middle powers right now. I think India is not really a middle power in the China situation because, in all honesty, if you look at it geographically speaking, if you look at it strategically speaking, if you look at it militarily speaking, India, uh, practically is the only country capable of countering China. Because the
But it
reason I
does
say
need
this,
support. It does need support. At this
it
current
does
stage,
need
it
support,
does need
but
support.
rather than militarily, it needs support, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of more, strategic manner. But
But China has rapidly modernized its military. Don't you think
see, I'll tell you
well,
something.
appropriate
I'll tell
military
you
support
something.
would be of great aid?
Yes, I'll tell you something. If you look at the Chinese military and how it is deployed in the Tibetan plateau, or in the whole of Tibet, or in basically the areas bordering India, China has nothing. It has no infrastructure. It has no airfields. It's a barren land, right?
Okay,
Whereas,
wait. So My producer's telling me that we have to take a break and we have to shift to ads. So just after this short ad, we'll be back with the rest. Bro, meeting खत्म हो रही है. Loud.
Okay, so my recording.
Okay, so we're back after our ad break, and we were just talking about, well, Chinese infrastructure, I believe, on the Tibetan side of the
Yeah.
border.
Yeah, so funny thing,
Yes,
I'll tell you that for the Air Force of China, it only has three bases in the region, which are, well, not even bordering India, relatively close to India. Well, they only have three bases in the region. Two are in sort of the Xinjiang province, where China has been in the news very famously, or infamously
I
rather.
mean, let's not go into that today.
Yes, and one is in the Tibetan Plateau. So
Right.
all these bases are approximately, say, 300 or 400 kilometers away from India, and that is, I am not taking into consideration the elevation, or the sort of de-elevation, if that's a word, in the region, because fighting in mountains, especially with the air forces, is very different, right?
Bro, what is this?
Runways is a different thing, but these are all the bases of the People's Liberation Army Air Force, not Tibet specifically.
Oh lord,
Uh,
my bad.
Wait, actually, I'll present a map.
Yeah, sure.
I'll share screen. You have disabled
We will
screen. Yeah,
delete this part. We will cut this part.
yeah. You can disable me controlling. Great. So here we have the map. Actually, I think this is an older map, because up here in the north, uh, there are supposed to be two bases here, but there's only one base. Well, getting to the point, there is only one base which is capable of directly reaching India, which is opposite Arunachal, right? But the sort of pressure we are facing is in Leh, right? And the only base capable of reaching there is in the northern sector,
Right.
which is 400 kilometers away from Leh. Now I'll tell you
Okay.
how far is India's closest base from Leh. It is the Srinagar airfield, which is barely 80 to 60 kilometers away from Leh, right? Which is capable of having heavy planes there, which has, well, it has MiGs deployed right now. But as soon as we get the 83 Tejas will be there. Leh airfield, MiG 29s are deployed there, which are excellent fighters. In airfields such as, say, Ambala, which is barely 100 kilometers, you know, in sort of direct terms from Leh, airfields, well, not Delhi, but airfields in the northern sector, maybe in Himachal or maybe in Uttarakhand. They have excellent fighters. They have Sukhois there. They have, well, now we would have Rafales deployed at Ambala, and you could always ship them up to Leh. But the fact is that China has no infrastructure to counter us there, and bulk of see the strategy that China goes with is quantity over quality. So bulk of Chinese air force is actually constitute it's comprising of J7.
Chinese bases, I believe, and how, well, China does not really have that many Air Force bases near India. The one that would be directly attacking on Leh is around 400 kilometer away, while our bases, one in Srinagar is about 60 to 80 kilometers, and Ambala is about 100 kilometers away from Leh. Right?
Yeah. So, and even geographically, the basis which China has, it's more towards, they have to cross mountain, right? But our advantage is that bases, well, Srinagar is sort of in a mountainous region, but Ambala
Okay.
is in a complete plain. And other bases around that area are also, in a plain. Even Pathankot, well, it seems like it's touching Pakistan, but its capability is quite inclined towards China as well, because it's quite near Jammu. you see, where Pathankot is located.
Okay.
So the point is that, see, India, in especially in terms of countering China, it's not only the military. Well, the Indian military is 1.4 million strong, if I'm not wrong, which is huge. It's now the largest standing military in the world. But
Which is including the army, the air force, the navy,
yeah,
the Indian military. When you talk about that,
but the
the
funny
four
thing
million
is
strong.
that India's home minister,
Yeah.
in fact, is the commander in chief of the world's third largest armed forces, which is the Central Armed Police Force. They are almost a million strong, even though they don't have big
Okay.
weapons such as tanks or aircrafts, which
We
in
do have
the
men.
military possesses. It's still strong force. 1 million people is not less by any means. 1 million trained people. So the thing is that China not only has to look at
Let's just say it's
quantity.
nothing like the dad's army of World War II in
Yeah,
Britain.
yeah, definitely.
It's nothing like that.
India is not the India of 62, but even China is not the China of 62. Both the countries have evolved quite a lot. China is starting to focus, towards modernization, which is very essential, which
I
is
mean, it has modernized a lot
yeah,
comparatively when we're looking
yeah.
at it.
But the thing is, it's still lacking. In the Chinese military is way behind India. Sorry, the Chinese Navy is way behind the Indian Navy. It doesn't even have a functional
No, but the
aircraft carrier.
Chinese Navy, uh, the Chinese Navy is investing a lot in what you
It's
call
definitely investing a lot.
blue
Yes,
water ships,
definitely,
right?
definitely.
Which
See, the thing
which
is
go into
that,
the deep sea. And in recent years, they'll be miles ahead of us.
yes, the problem which we are facing right now is only by the army, sort of, because not even the air force, because bulk of the Chinese air force
Okay.
is still comprised of quite, you know, uh, sort of ancient jets, so to say.
They're
Not that,
re-engineered, so that brings quality issues and
yeah, and it's reverse engineered. It's J7
yes.
is sort of not the perfect aircraft. So the problem is that the threat we are facing by China today is not what we should really worry about. It's more towards looking towards the future. And one problem which I have with the Indian government is that they sort of make claims without having their own standing. For example, they keep saying we'll get back oxygen, we'll get back oxygen. You don't
The
have the
Akhand
power to get
Bharat,
back
so
oxygen.
the Akhand Bharat, which includes, well, even Pakistan in
Yeah,
some points of view,
but the problem is you
that
don't
whole thing,
have the prominence or the power,
right?
to get back oxygen. The fact of the matter is that this government has neglected the military the most. The military right now has the lowest,
Though
share
it
of
might
the
have used
GDP.
it politically the most.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like
definitely,
inversely
definitely.
proportional in that sense.
While the general public might think that this government is supporting the military in a huge way, fact of the matter it isn't, right? Because first, just to start with, our the military share of the GDP is the lowest since 1962,
But
right?
like the GDP has grown, so and the
Exactly.
government is in a big deficit and is dealing with an economic crisis. So that does
See, the
provide it
thing
some sort of
is,
reason to shift funds away in one case.
the thing is that when you have a country where your
Right?
system of using the funds is not even appropriate, more than 60 to 70% of your military budget, not 60 70, but that might be too big an amount, but say 40 to 50% of your military budget
Goes
goes
into
towards giving
pensions.
pensions and giving
Yeah,
pays.
salary.
Exactly, it's not, you know
It's comparatively not large enough to deal with the standing army and
See,
the
it's
men we
not
have.
about being large. The thing is that the Indian army is it's fairly large, in comparison to our population. We don't need a bigger army. The fact is, we need a more modern army. We need a more
Right?
technologically advanced army. See, the thing is that the Indian army in terms of its training and in terms of its morale is exceptional. You would not find
Okay.
an army like this. You know, an army which can fight the Kargil war, which even the US army asks you that how the bloody hell did you fight this war?
I mean, the Israelites may beg to differ, but
Well,
I mean, in my
see,
opinion,
the
there's
fact
no
is,
beating the Indian
the
army.
fact
There's no
is,
beating the
in
Indian,
any country where you have compulsory military service, the
right?
quality of the soldiers can't be as high because it's not selective. While the
Hmm.
Indian army is completely voluntary, the fact of the matter is that you select people in your army, and especially you select officers. And the thing
And
is
you have
that
such a vast array of talent.
exactly that's and the Indian army is very very well trained. I mean, uh, so many foreign nations send their officers to be trained here. Actually Kazakhstan, we might not know, but Kazakhstan, for the size of the country it is and its standing, has a very good military. It has infrastructure,
Okay.
but it still sends its to soldiers to be trained in the National Defense Academy and the Indian Military Academy. So the thing is that
I think we've done that with, I mean, we do that with Nepal as well, if I'm not wrong.
no, no,
I may
no.
be
We
wrong.
we only take Gorkhas from Nepal. We don't train
Okay,
the
right.
Nepalese. We train the
But we
Bhutanese.
do have a training center in Bhutan because of our special
Yeah, yeah.
relationship.
Bhutan definitely.
Yeah.
Bhutan. We have IMTRAT there. That is the Indian military training team.
So I really don't mean to cut you short here, but I think we may be going on a bit too long today.
Yeah,
And
we
after
are
this
going
very
off topic
enlightening,
exactly. I was looking
I'm
towards
just
that.
going to come back to foreign policy and well wrap this up. You've given us really a masterclass in well military today, and it's been quite interesting. I mean, masterclass as well.
Well, just to
We
wrap
will
it up,
deserve that
actually, just before we shift towards foreign policy, just
foreign
to add
policy,
one last thing. Even if you see on this map, most of the
right?
concentration of the military is towards the South China Sea. If you would look at it, it covers the South China Sea, Taiwan, and sort of Japan, which is a bit towards the far, but it's mostly covering the South China Sea. And the reason is that, well, trade passes through there, and it's easier to build infrastructure there as compared to the mountains.
Absolutely.
So,
So when we're coming back to the quad here, I just want to come back to well the eternally debated principle of Indian foreign policy, which is non-alignment.
yeah,
And I heard the foreign minister speak recently, and he was talking about how India will never be part of an alliance. He
hmm,
emphasized on this fact that
yes,
India will never be part of an alliance,
hmm,
so to say. And the Quad comes awfully close to a military alliance in some terms. But
yes,
India does need strategic partnerships, and it has been shifting from this total well non-alignment. Non-alignment is a term, as he said.
yeah,
It's a term of that era of the Cold War era. It's probably not
yeah,
applicable here, but we can derive some of its principles to be used in the same situation. And and the thing was with the Cold War, India did not uh, have China, did not have the Soviet Union at its door or the US at its door. They weren't neighbors. With China, it's a whole different situation. So that brings out a different thing for us and it brings out some questions. So I would just like to end today with this thought to all of our listeners out there to think about the growing. Pranjal, do you want to add something?
yeah.
You can.
I was just
You
going
add.
to
You add.
say that
You add.
if
You add.
yeah, I was just going to say that if a new Cold War is beginning between China
Right.
and the US, the India is at the epicenter of that Cold War.
So let's leave you with that thought and let's leave you with thinking about where India is going to go in the future. And we hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, be sure to click on that button, click on subscribe, and share it with whoever you think might like this. And thank you so much.